Hi friends, let's enjoy the reading of chapters 9 and 10 for the timeless tale of Robin Hood and His Merry Men, by Maude Radford Warren. Chapter 9. Robin Hood and the Potter. A few days after their adventures with the sheriff's men, Robin Hood and Little John were standing on the Roman road, wondering how they should spend the day. Presently they heard the rumble of wheels and the sound of loud singing. They turned around and saw a potter driving a cart full of earthen pots of all sizes. "This fellow has no fear," said Robin Hood. "Every week he goes singing down the road as if there were no outlaws in the forest." "He is perfectly honest," said Little John, "and he has no doubt heard that we do not stop honest men. Yet, Master, give me leave to have sport with him." "Take your wool, Little John," said Robin Hood. When the potter came up, Little John said to him, "Ho, Potter, stop your cart, and pay us a toll. We are no longer going to let you ride free on our road." "Marry, you may whistle for your toll," shouted the potter. "Get up, Dobbin, we are 2-1, said Little John, and two big men, at that. "The biggest does not always win," retorted the potter, cheerfully. He jumped down from his cart, and took his great staff in his right hand. "Come, now," he said, "I challenge one of you to a play with the staff." Robin Hood stepped forward. "Ready, my brave fellow," he said. "Have at you." Then the two began to strike at each other, but both were skillful at the play, and parried each other's blows. At last the potter struck Robin on the wrist, and sent his staff spinning from his hand. "Well done, my man," said Robin. "Shall we go on fighting?" "Nay," said the potter, "for I see you are a man whom, in the end, I cannot beat. I should spend the morning here, and then who would sell my pots? I bid you good day." "Nay, then," said Robin, "let me take your clothes and sell your pots, and do you stay here with Little John and my other men, and feast on venison." The potter smiled. "Faith, I never tasted venison in my life," he said. "But do you know how to sell pots? Perhaps you will sell them too cheap." "Have no fear," replied Robin. "When I return I shall give you whatever money you ask for your wares." "Then strip off your green clothes and take my rags," said the potter. "Faith, 'tis many a day since I had a whole doublet." His woolen doublet was indeed torn and soiled, his stockings full of holes, and his shoes cut. When Robin was dressed in these garments no one would ever have dreamed that he was the great outlaw. He leaped into the cart, and drove gaily down the road till he reached the edge of Nottingham town. Then he made the horse go very slowly, crying loudly, "Pots! Pots! Who will buy my pots? Very cheap pots." The women came from the little houses, mothers with babies in their arms, and old women, all eager to ask his price. But Robin answered none of them till he reached the sheriff's great house. Then he said, "Threepence a pot." "Threepence." The women looked at one another. "The potter will not thrive long at his trade," they whispered. Never before were such pots sold for less than 5 pence. Buyers came from all about, and Robin did a thriving trade. From the corner of his eye he caught a glimpse of the sheriff's wife peeping at him from a window. At last he had sold all the pots but 5. "These are not for sale," he said. "These I give as a present to the sheriff's wife." Someone told this to one of the sheriff's maidservants, and she came out and carried the 5 pots in to her mistress. Then she returned and said that the sheriff's wife was pleased with the present, and would be glad to give Robin his dinner. Robin quickly tied his horse, and went inside. The maidservant took him into the kitchen, where she spread a meal of black bread, cheese, and cakes. While he was eating, the sheriff's wife came into the kitchen. She was a stout, pretty lady, with dancing black eyes. Her father had been a peasant, and she liked to slip into the kitchen and talk to the peasants who came to see her servants. But the sheriff preferred that she should sit in the main hall, and have nothing to do with people of low rank. Robin liked her, and they soon fell into pleasant talk. Then she went to the sheriff, who sat at work in his counting room, and told him that the potter was a good talker. "Bring him to me," said the sheriff. So Robin went from the kitchen to the counting room, and began to tell stories of adventure to the sheriff. At last he led the talk to the subject of archery. At that the sheriff's face grew grim. "My lord has had a misadventure with archery of late," laughed the sheriff's wife. Then she told Robin Hood the story he knew so well, about himself and his 3 followers. "It was good shooting, nevertheless," said the sheriff. "In faith, it is not difficult to shoot well," said Robin Hood, carelessly. "Can you shoot, fellow, that you talk so freely?" asked the sheriff. "Assuredly," said Robin Hood. "Prove it to me," said the sheriff. "I will take you to the square where the contest was held, and you shall shoot." When they had left the house, and the sheriff's horse had been brought him, Robin saw that the sheriff's lady was still standing in the great entrance. "Are you not coming, my lady?" he asked. "Nay," she said, "I have no palfrey. I must e'en stay at home." Robin thought it was strange that a man with so many horses as the sheriff must have, did not provide a proper palfrey for his wife. He kept his thoughts to himself, however, and drove behind the sheriff till they reached the square. Then he got down and took his bow and arrows from the bottom of the cart. He shot straight into the bull's eye. "Verily, you shoot as well as the strangers did who outwitted me here last month," said the sheriff. "Who are you, fellow?" "A man who has a little skill in shooting," replied Robin. "But one could hardly miss with this bow. Robin Hood put it into this cart this very morning." "What?" shouted the sheriff. "Do you know Robin Hood?" "As well as I know myself," replied Robin. The sheriff's fierce face grew crimson. "I want to see that man," he said. "I must know what he looks like." "Can you bring me to him?" "Do you mean that you wish to capture him?" asked Robin. "Yes. And yet, if you lead me to him now with a company of my men, he and his bowmen will hear them coming through the greenwood." "I do not want that." "Then what do you want?" asked Robin Hood. "I want to see his face so that I shall know him if ever we meet in Nottingham town. I do not doubt that he will attempt to meet me single-handed, as he has before. I want to be sure that I am capturing the great outlaw, and none other." "So your plan is to go alone with me to the greenwood to see Robin Hood?" asked Robin. "Yes, but I do not want him to see me," said the sheriff. "I do not think I can promise that," said Robin Hood. The sheriff looked at him doubtfully. "You can trust me, however," went on Robin. "I will answer for your life with my own. If Robin Hood's men kill you, they shall kill me, also. Then, if I can count on your loyalty, I will go with you in the morning," said the sheriff. "We two are strong enough to overcome Robin Hood should we chance to meet him alone." They went back to the sheriff's house, and Robin Hood spent the rest of the afternoon talking to the sheriff's lady. After supper he went at once to bed, and slept soundly till the morning. When he and the sheriff were ready to set out, he took leave of the sheriff's wife. "I thank you for your hospitality, lady," he said, "and I beg you to accept this red gold ring as a sign of my friendship." She slipped it on her plump finger. "A gold ring and 5 fine pots," she said. "Indeed, Potter, you are as generous as if you were an earl. I trust that some day you will be requited for your kindness." Robin Hood and the sheriff rode out of Nottingham and then down the straight road to Sherwood Forest. Robin related many a story and sang many a song to please the sheriff, who said that the ride seemed very short. "Faith, the rest of the day will seem long enough to you," said Robin. "What do you mean?" asked the sheriff. "You will find my meaning in Sherwood Forest," answered Robin. "Turn in here, my lord." The sheriff paused. "Do you mean treachery, fellow?" "Nay," said Robin, jumping from the cart. "I have passed my word that you shall be safe." He put his hand on the bridle of the sheriff's horse, and held him. Then he brought his silver bugle from inside his doublet, and blew a loud, clear blast. Immediately, Little John, the potter, and a score of bowmen ran from the greenwood. "Hey!" cried the potter. "Here come my clothes and my empty cart." "Dear master," cried Little John, "can this be the Sheriff of Nottingham?" "It is," said Robin Hood. "But I have sworn that he shall come to no harm among us. I have said that I will answer for his life with my own." Little John frowned. "The wound in my leg that his men made is still painful," he grumbled. "Master, is he not to pay for that?" "Nay, John," said Robin Hood, "this man is our guest for the day. I have taken food in his house. He shall dine safely in my greenwood." The sheriff was looking anxiously from one to another. "Release me," he stammered. "I command you. I am lord of this shire." "But I am lord of this forest," returned the great outlaw. "For I am Robin Hood, the man you wished to see." The sheriff stared at him helplessly. "I am going now to put on my own garments," said Robin. "Then I shall sit opposite you at dinner, my lord, and you can take your fill of gazing at me." Little John and George A. Green led the sheriff, blindfolded, to the grassy clearing, where Marian greeted them. She was very courteous to the sheriff, but he was so angry and afraid that he could scarcely reply to her. Soon a great dinner was spread. The sheriff saw haunch after haunch of the king's venison, which he was supposed to protect. He saw the king's pheasants and partridges and plovers. Robin Hood urged him to eat, but he could take only a few scant mouthfuls. After dinner Robin bade his archers set up a mark, and then he showed the sheriff what perfect marksmen they all were. "You see, my lord," he said, "that we can protect ourselves. If you should come to the greenwood with a company of soldiers, you know what you would meet with." The sheriff made no reply. He was very angry, and yet he could not help admiring the fine shooting. In the middle of the afternoon Robin took him back to the clearing. The potter ran after them. "Hold, Robin Hood," he said. "The day is going. I must get home to my while. Give me the money for the pots." "What were they worth?" asked Robin Hood. "A good pound of gold," said the potter, "and I hope you will give me all of it, though I am willing to pay for the good cheer I have had with your men." "You shall not pay for that," replied Robin, "for you were a welcome guest. Tell Little John to give you, from our treasury, not only 1 pound, but 10. And now farewell, potter. Remember that you are welcome here whenever you choose to come as a friend." The potter took off his hat. "I am proud to be the friend, however humble, of Robin Hood," he said. "Fare you well, my lord." "Farewell," said the sheriff. "Marry," laughed the potter, "I did not call you, lord. I spoke to Robin Hood. To my mind, that man is a lord who shows himself best in wit and in strength of body. Farewell again, my Lord Robert, Earl of Huntington." "Only Robin Hood of the Green Forest," said the outlaw simply. "Farewell, potter." Then Robin Hood turned to the sheriff. "Your horse is ready, my lord, and you have my leave to go." Little John came up, leading a white palfrey. "But where is my horse?" asked the sheriff. "You will ride home on this," said Robin Hood. "I have exchanged it for your horse. Your good lady has no palfrey, and you have more horses than you need." The sheriff was angrier than ever. He said never a word, but as Robin blindfolded his eyes he thought, 5 pots, a ring, and a white palfrey. My wife has profited by this adventure. He mounted the palfrey, and then Robin Hood led him through a maze of paths into the road. Farewell, sir, he said. I think you will hardly find your way back to our haunts. Give greetings to your lady from me. The sheriff made no reply. He only urged the white palfrey to a trot. As he hurried down the Roman road in a cloud of dust, Much, the miller's son, sang this song after him, George A. Green whistling the tune with all his might. Now Robin, lend to me thy bow, sweet Robin, lend to me thy bow, for I must now a-hunting with my lady go, with my sweet lady go. And whither will thy lady go? Sweet Wilkin, tell it unto me. And thou shalt have my hawk, my hound, and eke my bow, to wait on thy lady. My lady will to Uppingham forsooth will she. And I myself appointed for to be the man to wait upon my lady. Adieu, good Wilkin, all beshrewd, thy hunting nothing pleaseth me. But yet beware thy babbling hounds stray not abroad for angering of thy lady. My hounds shall be led in the line, so well I can assure it thee. Unless by strain of view some pursue I may find, to please my sweet lady. With that the lady she came in, and willed 'em all for to agree, for honest hunting never was accounted sin, nor never shall for me. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10. The Adventure of Little John and the Sheriff. The Sheriff of Nottingham was determined to wreak vengeance upon Robin Hood and his followers. For weeks he and his men went through Sherwood Forest, seeking traces of the outlaws. But the sheriff was never able to find the path which led to the grassy clearing. Often an arrow would fall among his soldiers as a warning that Robin Hood and his bowmen wished to be let alone. Finding that he could not take Robin Hood, the sheriff did a very unjust thing. He found out the names of some of the poor people whom Robin Hood had helped and began to persecute them because they were friends of an outlaw. At this Robin Hood was exceedingly angry. He did his best for the poor people, giving them venison and money. But the sheriff continued to ill-treat them. If ever I take that man again, said Robin Hood, I will not let him off so easily. At this Little John begged to go forth on an adventure. Give me leave, good master, he said. I think I can find a way to make the sheriff prisoner. I cannot forgive him for the wound in my leg, to say nothing of the way he treats these poor people. Go your way, John, said Robin Hood, only be careful that no harm comes to you. Little John went to Marian and asked her to look in her chests and find him a common suit of homespun cloth. Then she gave him a dye made of walnut with which he dyed his light hair and stained his skin. Even his friends hardly recognized Little John in the dark gypsy who stood ready to set forth on an adventure. He cut a staff and walked quickly to the town of Nottingham. When he reached the sheriff's house he knocked and demanded to see the lord. The servant who answered the door looked at him scornfully. What has a poor fellow like you to do with my master? He asked. Tell your master that I am looking for a place as a servant. Say that I am not only a strong man, but that I can shoot with a bow and arrow as well as Robin Hood. At that the servant let him in, for the sheriff was always eager to talk with a man who could shoot. The sheriff looked up when Little John entered the doorway of the counting room. So you wish to be my servant? He said. If you can really shoot well, I will take you. Little John soon showed him in the public square how well he could speed an arrow. The sheriff was pleased. I will take you as my own bodyguard, he said. Upon this Little John looked pleased, too. He knew that if once he could get the sheriff off alone, he could easily take him to Robin Hood. But not for a week, the sheriff added. I will see if you have the faithfulness a good servant should have, by putting you in the scullery. The steward will give you your orders. You may go." Little John was anything but pleased to hear these words. After living a healthy life in the open air, he hardly knew how he could endure staying in a little dark scullery, cleaning knives and plates. However, since it was only for a week, he determined to try. For 3 days he did his best, though it was very wearisome. The steward was severe with him, and made him do all the hardest work. Whenever he thought Little John was lazy, he struck him with his thick staff. Little John bore it all in silence, though his head ached as well as his back. On the 4th morning he was awakened early by the sound of the sheriff going off on a hunt. Little John was very tired. He was sure that he would become ill if he stayed in the scullery another day. So he determined to leave the sheriff's service and try to take him prisoner in some other way. About sunrise the steward knocked at his door and ordered him to get up. "Not I," said Little John. "I am going to sleep till noon." The steward beat on the door again and again. "Beat it in, if you like," said Little John, "but if you do, the sheriff will call you to account." At noon, Little John got up and went to the kitchen. The steward sprang at him, and struck him with a club. John easily knocked him down. "I am a strong man," said Little John. "You had better not attack me again, for another time I will really do you some harm." He went into the pantry, where venison and pastry were on the shelves, as well as fruits and cheeses. But John was honest. He took only the black bread and curds which were allowed him for breakfast. While he was eating, the steward shut and locked the pantry door. Little John only laughed, and when his breakfast was over he broke the door down and went into the kitchen. "Farewell to you," said he. But a man almost as huge as Little John himself barred the door. This was the new cook, whom the steward had ordered to fight with John. Both of them were willing, for neither had ever been beaten. They got long staves and went into the courtyard. For 2 hours they struck at each other, and neither had the best of it. At last the big cook threw down his staff. "No more for me," he roared. "You are the best man I have ever met. I would call you friend." Little John threw away his staff. "Gladly," said he. "And now, let us leave this house. If you are a friend of mine, you will stay no longer with this steward and his lord, the sheriff." Off they went through the town, and then into the woods about Nottingham. Little John told the cook who he was, and asked him if he would take service with Robin Hood. "Nothing would please me better," replied the cook, "for I have heard many a tale of his courage and kindness. Take me to your lord." After they had walked 2 or 3 miles, they heard the sound of a hunting horn. "Stop," said Little John. "Is not that the sheriff's horn?" "Truly," replied the cook, "I think it is." "A plan has occurred to me," said Little John. "Do you take my bugle and follow this winding path by the hawthorn. When you have gone 2 miles, blow. Robin Hood and his men will come. Tell them who you are, and ask Robin Hood to wait in the clearing by the yew trees till I come." "I will do as you say," replied the cook. Then Little John ran off, following the sound of the sheriff's horn. After a short time he came upon the sheriff and 2 or 3 of his men. Little John hurried to the sheriff, and said, breathlessly, "Oh, master, come with me. I will lead you to the finest buck that ever was seen. It has a green skin." "Come, come, my good servant," said the sheriff. "Who ever heard of a buck with a green skin?" "But I have seen it, my lord," persisted Little John. "It is here in the forest, not 3 miles away." "It must be some magic, if the skin is green," said the sheriff. "No, it is not magic," said Little John. "And that is not all, master. He has sharp antlers, 60 of them. 60 antlers, cried the sheriff. And 50 deer follow him, also in green. Nay, my good servant John, your eyes have deceived you, said the sheriff. Only come with me, master, and see, urged John. There can be no harm in that, said the sheriff. So he and his men followed Little John along the path by the hawthorns. Whenever Little John thought the sheriff or his men were impatient because they did not come up with the deer, he began to tell what a wonderful creature it was. At last he brought him to the clearing by the yew trees. Here we are, master, said Little John, catching sight of green coats among the yew trees. The buck you seek is at hand. At that moment out stepped Robin Hood and 100 archers. They surrounded the sheriff and his men, and took them prisoners. Fellow, said the sheriff to Little John, you have deceived me. Nay, said Little John, I but spoke in parable. The green skin of the buck is the green raiment of Robin Hood, and the 60 antlers are his arrows. And I owed you this for that arrow you once had shot into my leg. Step back, Little John, commanded Robin. Now, my lord sheriff, he said, I could easily take your life, but I will not. I will keep you here, and make you live and work as we do. For how long? Asked the sheriff. That I do not know, replied Robin Hood. The sheriff reflected that at least his life was safe, and he hoped that he and his men would somehow escape. Besides, life and work in the greenwood could not be very hard. But in all this the sheriff was mistaken. He could not escape, for there were always 3 or 4 of Robin's bowmen with him. Every morning he helped dress venison and prepare vegetables for dinner. Every afternoon he practiced shooting till his arms ached. After supper he helped cleanse the dishes. Little John enjoyed seeing him scrape trenches, though he always did half the work himself. It amused Much, the miller's son, to hurry through whatever evening task was assigned to him, and then to stand close to the sheriff who was still at work, and sing some carefree song. The following was one of his favorites. Come follow, follow me. Ye fairy elves that be, which circle on the green, come follow Mab, your queen. Hand in hand let's dance around, for this place is fairy ground. When mortals are at rest, and snoring in their nest, unheard and unespied, through keyholes we do glide. Over tables, stools, and shelves, we trip it with our fairy elves. And if the house be foul with platter, dish, or bowl upstairs we nimbly creep, and find the sluts asleep. Then we pinch their arms and thighs. None us hears, and none us spies. But if the house be swept, and from uncleanness kept, we praise the household maid, and duly she is paid. Every night before we go, we drop a tester in her shoe. Then o'er a mushroom's head our tablecloth we spread. A grain of rye or wheat, the diet that we eat. Pearly drops of dew we drink, in acorn cups filled to the brink. The brains of nightingales, with unctuous fat of snails, between 2 cockles stewed, is meat that's easily chewed. Tails of worms and marrow of mice, do make a dish that's wondrous nice. The grasshopper, gnat, and fly, serve for our minstrelsy. Grace said, we dance a while, and so the time beguile. And if the moon do hide her head the glow worm lights us home to bed. O'er tops of dewy grass so nimbly do we pass, the young and tender stalk, ne'er bends where we do walk. Yet in the morning may be seen where we the night before have been. What distressed the sheriff most was sleeping on the ground. Much helped him make a bed of green boughs, but they cut into his flesh. Then Much got grass and moss for him, but still he could not sleep comfortably. Besides, he was afraid of wild beasts, and he did not like to wake in the dawn when the birds began to chirp. At the end of 3 days he came to Robin Hood in tears. "There is not a more miserable man in the whole of Nottinghamshire than I," he said, "and all because I have tried to punish you for breaking the law." "There you are mistaken," said Robin. "An outlaw is subject to none. I make my own law and my own kingdom. I have never hurt you, and yet you have tried to kill me." "Let us speak no more," said the sheriff. "I wish you would kill me now, Robin Hood, for I assure you I would far rather die than live and work longer in your forest." Marian felt sorry for the sheriff. "His poor wife must long for him," she said. "Let him go, Robin. I am sure he will not make trouble for you again." "If I let you free," said Robin Hood, "what will you do?" "I will go back to Nottingham town," said the sheriff, "and neither I nor my men will ever seek to kill you or yours." "That is not enough," said Robin, "for you are not able to kill us." "Then I will no longer persecute Sir Richard of the Lee, who lately helped you," said the sheriff. "Good. But can you promise nothing more?" "I can help your men if ever they come into my power," said the sheriff after a pause, "and I will do that. Also, I will no longer trouble the poor whom you have helped." "You have learned your lesson, my lord sheriff," said Robin, "and you have learned it cheaply at the cost of an aching back and tired arms." Robin Hood called his bowmen and ordered them to free the sheriff and his followers, mount them on their horses, blindfold them, and led him to the Roman road. He himself led the horse of the sheriff. "And now, goodbye," he said. "Go you back to your good wife and give her gentle greetings from me." "Farewell, Robin Hood," said the sheriff. "I do not wish to call you friend, but I respect you as a courteous enemy." They bowed to each other, and parted. Presently the clatter of the horses' hoofs died away on the Roman road, and Robin and his men were left once more sole occupants of Sherwood Forest. End of Chapter 10. Thank you for watching. Hope you have enjoyed Chapters 9 and 10 of the audiobook, Robin Hood and His Merry Men, by Maude Radford Warren. Please watch the next episode. Do not forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe to the video. Also, visit our channel, www.youtube.com/@weaversnest. For more information, visit the website, www.weaversnest.org.